Okay, welcome back. So today we're going to talk about how we can make an add to counter bomb. Now this one just says plus 10, but I have my current board set to be moves. So if I click on it, it's only going to add 5, not 10. And then click on the board, we got 5 moves. However, it's not going to go above the max. So let me play for just a second here to show you that. So if we do that, so now we're at 33. Let's go down just a bit more. I might fast forward this super fast. Okay, so we started this board with 35 moves. If I click the booster and then click the board, we go up by 5. So yeah, let's dive right in. Alright, hey there, welcome back. So today we're going to be taking a look at making another booster. The booster we're going to be looking at today is the adding time or moves to the counter booster. And for the moment we're going to focus on the adding time, but I'll talk about how you can make it so it's the same with the adding moves. So what I want to do here is I want to take a look at my HBox container script, which currently has the booster info in it. Now, I had received a question recently about where this booster info came from and that maybe I didn't do a very good job explaining it. So let's talk about what that booster info actually is. So if we want to go to our scripts, we have our boosterinfo.gd script right here. We created this at the beginning of the booster process 2 videos ago. This doesn't need a ready or a delta, so I'll just delete them. This only inherits from node, which is the base thing that you can inherit from in Godot. And all this holds is what we want our first, second, and third booster to be in what's called a dictionary. These dictionaries have different key values. So key value 0, which is this one, which is set to be 1. So this is the first booster, blank, second booster, blank, third booster, blank. Now in our booster manager, which is managing this HBox container, which is what the script is, last time we set it so that we have the first one set to be a color bomb. I'm going to change this from color bomb to be counter bomb, which is just going to change the value of the counter. Now, if I go to my booster script itself here, add to counter is what I should call it, not counter bomb. So we'll call this add to counter, like that. Now, in our boosters themselves, when the value is add to counter, it changes to the add to counter texture, which is this one right here. So now if I hit play, this is probably going to be super loud, so I'm going to have to check to make sure that the volume isn't crazy. Okay, I'm going to open up my streaming software. Okay, the volume is not crazy. Good. All right, so anyway, back to this. So now we've got this add to counter texture. Now if I click on it, nothing is going to happen because we send the value, when you click on it, we send the signal to the HBox container that it was pressed, and actually not to the HBox container, but to the bottom UI. And then it emits the signal booster. And if we go back to the game window, bottom UI emits that signal booster, and that signal is then picked up by the grid. And bottom UI booster, make booster active. And what make booster active does is makes it so that we're in the booster state. Now from there, I did not do a good job of that. We need to tell it which booster is active, so it's not just doing any booster. So we need to emit signal booster, and then we also need to tell it which booster we're currently using. Okay, sorry about that weird cut. So we need to tell it not just that a booster is being used, because the way that I set this up last time was a little careless. I'm having it so that it's just the color bomb, just make color bomb. So we need to pass in some information as to which kind of booster it is as well, instead of just that it is a booster. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our bottom UI scene. I want to look at the booster object. I want to look at its script. I'm going to create another variable here that I'm going to call var type, and I'm going to default it to be an empty string. Now when we set those booster types, if it's a color bomb, I'm going to set type to color bomb. If it's a add to counter, I'm going to set the type to add to counter. And if it's the destroy piece type, I'm going to set the type to destroy piece. And if it's nothing, I'm going to reset the type to be nothing. So type equals empty string. Okay, cool. So now we're setting the type. Now, right now I've hooked this up for booster button 1, and it emits signal. I also want it to emit an argument with that signal. And the argument I want it to emit is going to be $, and I want to go down to booster1.type. So I want it to emit the type that's on that booster. I'm going to do something similar for booster 2 and booster 3. So let's look at booster 2. I'm going to connect the pressed with the bottom UI, and I'm going to grab this, copy it, and I'm going to paste it there. And this time, instead of being booster1.type, it's going to be booster2.type. And then one more time for booster 3. So pressed, connect, bottom UI, and I'm going to replace this whole line and change this from booster 1 to booster 3. Now, I just like to tidy this up a little bit here so that there's one line between things. I'm going to save that, and when we emit that signal, this signal, remember, is going from the bottom UI to the grid. When the grid accepts it, the grid needs to know what argument is coming with it. So bottom UI booster, we're going to send in a booster type value, and we're going to pass that on to make booster active as well. Actually, let's not do that just yet. We'll fix that in a second. I just want to make sure it's working. So I'm going to add a print here, and I want to print booster type. So I'm going to save that, and we're going to hit play on the main window. And again, I hope the volume isn't too loud. So add to counter, so it knows what it is. Whereas if I had made that a color bomb, it would say color bomb. So there we go. We're good so far. Now, for make booster active, I'm going to pass in the value here as well. So booster type. And then that's going to go all the way up to make booster active, which is going to take... Actually, since make booster active doesn't use it, instead of passing it through to make booster active, we're going to have that be a value that's held on the grid itself. So I'm going to jump all the way up here. And I'm going to make a variable for booster stuff. I feel like I already made a variable, but maybe that was just on my version of it. Tap to play, hit stuff, piece array, obstacles. Nope, I guess I didn't. Okay, so under booster stuff, we're going to have a var, we'll call this current booster type, and we'll set this equal to nothing to start. Then, when that booster button is pressed, and we do make booster active, so make booster active, we'll need to have booster type. And then when we do the make booster active, which makes it active or inactive, we'll pass in a booster type. When we're changing the state to booster, we're going to say that current booster type is equal to booster type. And when we're setting it to move, we're going to say current booster type is equal to nothing. So when we're resetting it to move, we'll set the current booster type equal to nothing. Now, when we do our booster input, we're going to need to check to see which kind of booster is currently active. So we're only going to do this make color bomb if current booster type double equals, because we're checking to see if it's equal to something instead of changing the value. Color bomb, then we'll do this make color bomb. Now we need to add an else if here for if we're in the add to counter. Elif current booster type is equal to add to counter. Then we're going to, I'm just going to put a pass here for now. Instead of doing make color bomb, we'll do add to counter. So function add to counter. And then this is going to need, actually, So we're going to make it so that it's 10 if it's seconds, and we'll say 5 if it's moves. So we're going to do, just call the value add to counter here instead of passing the number that we're adding to it into as an argument. So we're going to add to counter. Now I have forgotten what I called the different game types. So I've got my, this is why it's really good to make sure that you have everything nicely commented here. So is moves. So we have it as is moves and current counter value and update counter. So add to counter, we're going to say if is moves, then current counter value plus equals 5, because we're adding 5 moves. Else current counter value plus equals 10, because we're adding 10 seconds. And then we're going to emit signal update counter. And I think that needs to pass in the current counter value as well. All right, cool. So now if we go out of here, let's try this out. Let's hit play. So, uh-oh. Oh. Okay, so it is, oh, okay, we need to make sure that we're actually inside the grid before we do that, because otherwise we're just adding to the counter every time we click it. So what I want to do here is I want to say if, let's say, so when I did the color bomb, yeah, I want to make sure that it's in grid. So I'm going to make a little temporary variable here. I'm going to call this var temp is equal to get global mouse position if is in grid temp. Actually, I want to do pixel to grid temp. Then we're going to add to the counter. And I forget if pixel to grid needs 2 arguments or 1. Pixel to grid, yep, it does. So we need to do pixel to grid temp.x and temp.y. All right, I'm going to save that. And let's hit play here. So I've selected, I have no idea how many times I pressed that. Holy cow. That's adding an insane amount. Why is it adding so much? So is my board currently set to be moves or not? Is moves is on. And then, oh, I need to check to make sure that I'm not exceeding the maximum value, which I think I set here. No, I didn't set the max value. I assumed that I would always have it go down. All right, so there's an error on my part. So instead of having this be current counter value, I'll leave that current counter value, but instead of having this be an export, I'm just going to leave it a var, and I'll default it to 0, and I'll make an export int var counter max value. All right, now that's going to mess some stuff up. So counter max value, I'm going to say is, let's do 30. Now the reason I did that is because we want to make sure that our counter value is never going above the max so that you can't just spam it like I just did. So now I want to go down here. So add to counter, I want to add a little check here. So I want to say if current counter value is greater than counter max value, then current counter value is equal to counter max value. And then we'll emit the signal. So let's hit play. So Huh, it looks like it's only updating it a few times. Interesting. All right, so one thing I need to do really quickly is I need to make sure that I'm setting my current counter value equal to the counter max value in the ready. Some of you noticed that right away. It started at 0, so starting at whatever I said it was. So current counter value is equal to counter max value. Now, the other thing I'm going to do here is it seems to only be recognizing a few of the presses. So I'm going to make some changes to the booster really quick so that I can know if the booster is so I can know if the booster is active or not. So well, sorry for that weird cut. So what I'm going to do here is I want to trace what the booster is actually doing. So I did that starting here by putting a print booster type. Now I'm going to add something else here. When we make the booster active at the end of this method, outside of the if and else if statements, I'm going to print state so that I know what the current state is. When we do the booster input, I'm going to print added to counter. Now, after we emit the signal, I'm also going to print current counter value. So I'm going to save all that. Let's hit play. Okay, so we're at 30. I'm going to make a couple moves here really quickly. All right, cool. So now we're at 27. Let's just get down to 30 here, or 25, so that we can go back up to the full 30. Here. I'm going to explain what's wrong. I haven't changed anything yet, but I'll explain how to fix it here. So what I want to do is I want to grab my emit signal at update counter. So if you want to, you can just double click any variable value and it'll highlight the variable that you're currently on. So I'm going to double click update counter. If you press Control F, you'll start the find, and you can use these arrows up here to go up or down. So I want to go to the other instances of update counter. So here, update counter, no argument put afterwards. And the reason there's no argument is because I forgot the way I want to do this. So if we go and look at the top UI script, and we look at the update counter, it's because I defaulted the amount to change to be -1. So plus equals the amount to change, and then counter label, And I had thought ahead that I might want to increase instead of always decrease. But now what I did was, so if we go down to the other instance, I told it to update the counter by whatever the current counter value is. In this case, meaning 30. So I want to update the counter, and what I want to do instead is I'm going to copy this line here. Actually, I'm just going to copy the emit signal part. I'm going to cut it. And then I don't need to do this to the current counter value stuff. I don't need to do that. I just need to paste this here and paste this here because the grid isn't keeping track of it. So I'm just going to do 5 for if it's moves, and then 10, oops, for if it's seconds. And then I don't have to do any of this stuff here, so I'll just get rid of that. And then what I need to do is in the top UI, this is where I need to have the max value. So current count, so what I want is, I want to have a value for the max count. So I'm going to make this an, well, if I put it as an export, then I'd be setting that here, which doesn't make a ton of sense. So instead, I'm going to make another little signal for here. So in my, this video is a little bit all over the place, so apologies. In my, not my booster stuff, but my counter stuff up here, counter variables. So instead of having this that I just changed to max value, I'm going to change that back to how it was. And then this is going to be an export type int var current counter value. Yeah, I'll default to like 20. That way if I forget to assign it in the inspector, there's always a value there. So these moves, game over, and I want to do signal set max counter. And when I emit that signal, I'm going to pass in just whatever the current value is at ready. So we'll say emit signal set max counter, current counter value, and then back in the top UI, actually, I need to connect that signal. So my grid, signals, set max counter, connect to top UI. And when we do set max counter, we're going to have a variable, or variant max counter equals 0. And then in here, we'll say new max counter, and then we'll say max counter is equal to new max counter. The reason I'm doing this is so that we're not going over the number of moves that we start the level with. So if you're okay with people going over the number of moves, then by all means, you don't have to do this. Okay. Mirror. 17. Wait, let's try that again. So play. Let me get it down to 15 and then it should go up to 20. I'm confusing myself here, so I'm sure I'm confusing you guys at home. Apologies. So there's 16. There's 15. Alright, so click, 20. Nice. Alright, cool. Alright, so there we go. Now, one thing you want to make sure that you're doing is in the inspector, you want to make sure you've got your current counter value. So I'm going to set mine higher than it was to like 35. And then I'm going to make sure that I save all my scenes. And yeah, there we go. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comments down below. You can follow me on Twitter to find out when I post new videos. You can join my Discord. Tons of really great people there who are willing to answer questions. I'm trying to be there every day. Otherwise, yeah, you can follow my Patreon. As little as $1 a month really helps me make these videos happen. And yeah, I hope everybody out there has themselves a wonderful day.